All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Morgan Crossman, and I'm the Executive Director at Building Bright Futures. Welcome to the March State Advisory Council meeting. I want to take a quick moment to say I cannot believe that a year ago we were just all diving into emergency response for Vermont's early childhood arena. So I just want to take a minute to say thank you to each of you for showing up, not just for your teammates on the State Advisory Council, but on behalf of all of Vermont's kids and families, your own kids and families, and those within your sectors across the state. This board is really about collective impact and how we can come together to make a difference in the lives of kids and families. So thank you, because I know what a challenging year it's been, and you've done an incredible job. I want to start today's meeting before we move into our mindful moment to just share a brief excerpt from a statement that was recently published by a former mentor of mine, Jack Shonkoff at the Harvard Center on Developing Child. And I think it kind of frames what our work is for the State Advisory Council in the next year. So he just wrote, now a year later, early childhood policies and services are at a critical inflection point, and the need to build a stronger ecosystem has never been more compelling. Longstanding concerns about fragile infrastructure and chronic funding constraints have been laid to bear. The science of early childhood development continues to advance, and the tenuous systems that were put in place to support families before the pandemic began need to be rethought, not just be rebuilt. Early childhood policy must be about the foundations of both lifelong health and readiness to succeed in school. The reconstruction of a more robust ecosystem that forges stronger connections at all levels among healthcare providers, both physical and mental health, early care and education, social services, child welfare, and financial supports among many is essential. Making sure that all policies and services are guided by the best available knowledge, both scientific and pragmatic, and evaluated rigorously to determine what works, for whom, and in which contexts are necessary prerequisites for achieving great impact at scale. Few disagree with that call for a different path forward, but the nature of that path remains to be determined. And that is really what I see as this State Advisory Council's opportunity in the next year. So during today's meeting, next slide, please, we are going to thank departing SAC members. We'll welcome new members and discuss the roles, strengths, and opportunities for our State Advisory Council in the next year. So just a couple quick housekeeping items. We are asking that as folks come on to today's call that you be on mute. We will do an SAC roll call and introductions of new members. And if you are not an SAC member at that part of today's meeting agenda, please introduce yourself in the chat bar. We are also going to be doing an interesting series of votes today. So if you are not an SAC member, as we are going to call a vote, please turn your camera off at that time. We're going to ask everybody who's in favor to say aye or give a thumbs up, and anyone who is opposed or abstaining, please please unmute yourself and verbally vote. And before we start, if this is your first State Advisory Council meeting, it is our practice to start with a mindful moment. So I'm going to transition over to Amanda Biggs.
Thank you, Morgan. Hi, everybody. I invite you to turn your video cameras off for a few moments. And we'll begin by finding a comfortable position. If it's possible to plant your feet firmly on the floor or ground, and take a few deep breaths in, letting your chest rise and fall with each inhalation and exhalation. And when you're ready, let your eyes drift closed. As you continue to breathe slowly and deeply, let your attention rest gently on your breath, feeling the movement as it enters and exits your body. Each time you inhale, let go of any tension. On your next exhale, settle your attention to the area around your heart. Focus on the feelings of love, compassion, and hope. With your attention on your heart center, bring to mind an individual or group of individuals you are grateful for, and say thank you to them right now in your mind. As you continue with your easy, relaxed breathing, perhaps you also feel gratitude for being alive and healthy. Or perhaps you are grateful for the abundance of nature that produces food to nourish your body and beautiful scenery to nourish your soul. Take this moment now to pause and again say thank you. Breathing in once more, let's make space to hold hope in our hearts. May we know our strengths. May we be filled with courage, and may our love flow from us into this world. Finally, bring your attention to how this gratitude and hope feels in the area around your heart. With each inhale, let this feeling grow outwards, expanding to fill your chest, your arms, your hands, your legs, and feet. With each breath, this feeling grows, filling you up. Let your body remember the sensations of your gratitude and your hope. Thank you. You may now turn your videos back on.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, we're going to pause our screen share, and we have a really exciting series of introductions and votes to call today. So I'm going to turn it over to our State Advisory Council co-chair, Chloe Leary.
Hey everybody, happy Monday, sunny Monday. Nice to see you all here. I'm going to do the roll call. And for those of you again who are not a member of the State Advisory Council, if you just pop your name in the chat and who you are, whether you're a parent, organization you work for, what's your interest, that would be great. So we know who is sitting here with us at the table. I will start with our state partner. No, I don't know if it's in order, but Cheryl, are you here?
I am. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Cheryl. And then Renee Kelly.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hi, Renee. Miranda Gray.
Hello.
Hi, Miranda. Nice to have you. Ken Jones. Not yet. Alyssa Stahlberg or Janet Kilburn from the Health Department. There's Alyssa.
Elisa's here.
I'm so sorry, Elisa. I always mess that up. Elisa, I'm gonna
No
get it right
worries.
next time. Representative Brumstead, Jessica Brumstead, are you with us? And Kim Kaiser.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Kim.
Hi.
And Allie Richards.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Allie. Julie Cadwallader-Staub, are you here? Oh, I see. Okay. Nicole Grenier, are you with us today? And Emily Merrill.
Hi.
Hi, Emily. And Amy Johnson.
Hi.
Hi, Amy. Christy Swenson.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Christy. And Flora Diaz-Smith.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Flora. Nice to see you. I'm happy to welcome our newest designated member, Wendy Trafton, who is the Deputy Director of Healthcare Reform. Wendy is the Secretary of Human Services designated representative. Some of you may remember Auburn Watersong was serving that role. So welcome to Wendy to join us on the State Advisory Council. And did I see you?
I'm here. Hi. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.
And Kate Rogers. Kate,
nope.
are you here?
Nope.
Yep, I'm here.
Sorry, Kate, you weren't on my list, but I see you right there. Did I miss anybody else? Great, thank you. Oh yes, you were on my list, my bad. And then we have a couple new proposed members that we'll be hearing more about later, but I just want to take a minute here to ask them to introduce themselves. And if you could just say your who you are, where you're from, and why you're excited to be on the State Advisory Council, that would be great. So Lexi Duquette, are you with us? Not seeing Lexi. And Dr. Ashley Miller, are you able to be here?
Hi, everybody. Sorry for the sunny day. I'm Ashley Miller. I'm a pediatrician down in South Royalton Health Center. I'm a member of the state chapter for pediatrics and very excited about helping our kids.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Nice to have you. Rebecca Webb, are you with us?
I am. Hi, guys. I'm Becca Webb. I am an Act 166 Regional Coordinator.
Great, nice to have you. Thanks for joining. And Eddie Gale.
And hi, Eddie Gale. I work with the A.D. Henderson Foundation. I'm a past state council member, and the foundation is very deeply interested in early childhood.
Welcome back, Eddie. Thanks for coming. Mike McWraith, am I saying that correctly, I hope?
Yep, 2 syllables, McWraith. Thank you. I work as the Assistant Executive Director at the Vermont Principals Association. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being here. And Paul Dragon, are you with us? All right. Well, thanks to those of you who introduced us in the chat. Welcome to those who have not been here or who are thinking of joining us. We're excited to have you. And I'm going to hand it back over to Cheryl.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see everyone here and the new folks that are joining. So today we are going to focus on membership and the role of the State Advisory Council. So I think a lot of folks know the State Advisory Council is a voting body, which is comprised of 23 individuals, 7 state agency leaders that are designated, 3 members from our Vermont legislature, 13 at-large members of the public, and then a non-voting representative from the governor's office. At-large members serve for 3 years and then up to 2 consecutive terms. So we wanted to acknowledge some folks whose terms are coming to an end. We've been really lucky to have a number of longstanding individuals who have been very committed to building bright futures. The first of whom we wanted to recognize was Kim Kaiser, who has certainly, Kim was here well before me as one of the founding mothers of Vermont's early childhood system. Kim, I've greatly appreciated everything you've offered. You're just calm, kind, ability to keep us moving. Kim has served as Deputy Commissioner for the Child Development Division and as the Executive Director for Building Bright Futures. Kim joined the board in 2015 as a key collaborator, representing our philanthropic partners in her role with the Terrell Foundation. And I wanted to read a comment from Reva Murphy, who also used to be our Child Development Division Deputy Commissioner and was a very committed and important person to building bright futures. Reva was hoping to be here today, Kim, but she couldn't. So she wrote, Kim has been one of the strongest champions and advocates for building bright futures and the regional councils from the start. She brought in colleagues from North Carolina to learn from their experiences, carved out funding from the Child Development Division in the early days, and has stepped in to provide leadership during transitions. She stood beside this work through many growing pains and interactions of the organization. If not for Kim's leadership at the beginning and thoughtful stewardship over the years, there wouldn't be a Building Bright Futures in Vermont. So Kim, thank you so much for everything you've done for the council and all of the leadership and guidance you've provided so many of us.
Oh, thank you so much. It's my pleasure. And the things that we've been able to accomplish could not have been done without the collective impact of all of you and the agencies that you represent. So, and even though my term on the council is ending, I'm sure we will continue to see each other quite frequently going forward.
Good. Thank you, Kim. I believe I am turning it over to Chloe and Carolyn for our next recognition of a member who is leaving Building Bright Futures.
Yes, thanks, Cheryl. Julie Cadwallader-Staub has been here since 2015 on the council and in early childhood for many years, and a great supporter. And since Carolyn is here and knows her so well, I'm gonna hand it over so Carolyn can speak to her role in our early childhood world.
Hi all, it's Carolyn Wesley. It's been a while since I've been with you at a BBF State Advisory Council, but so happy to be here today to celebrate my former boss and mentor, Julie. I understand she actually can't be on today, but this is being recorded and will be sent to her. So I'll just speak as if she were with us. You know, I think that when Julie came into her role as the grant director on the Early Learning Challenge grant, there was already some wonderful collaboration underway in the early childhood world, particularly across state government agencies. But I think Julie provided some incredible capacity to bring that collaboration to the next step, and her unique brand of gentle and firm leadership really allowed that. She is not a leader who leads from the front. And so she invited all the folks at the table to come together to build relationship, to work around a common goal. And, you know, Riva was talking about, without Kim Kaiser, there wouldn't be a Building Bright Futures. I think Julie also played a really important role from the start of that grant, really seeing the importance of BBF as a place where the collaboration could live in the long term, and paying particular attention to the success of BBF when the grant dollars were there, and setting it up for success in the long term. You know, and the other thing I really want to recognize about Julie as a leader that I think is very special was just how much she supported me, and I think how much she has supported everyone she worked with. And it's, I think, rare to, she knew I was in a term limited position at an early part of my career, and really basically helped me out the door in a wonderful way. And that's not something, now that I'm on the other side, or have been on the other side of management, that's really rare to do. And she helped me out the door to BBF. And that was also, I think, part of her planning for transitioning from the grant. And so I am so grateful for the time I spent with Julie, for all of her contributions to our work, which she continued to do at Stern. I didn't bring her full bio with me today, so sorry for any role that didn't get acknowledged. But Julie, I'm so excited for you in retirement. I hope we get a chance to go for a walk together soon. And I hope you'll all join me in thanking her for all her commitments to the early childhood world.
Thank you so much for being here, Carolyn. And for those of you who are new board members, Carolyn previously served as the deputy director at Building Bright Futures. And Carolyn, do you want to say where you are now, just for folks who haven't met you before?
Sure. I'm currently working as chief of staff to Vermont Senate President Pro Tem Becca Ballant. So hopefully, we know we have a child care bill coming our way in the Senate a little bit later. And so we'll probably all be talking to you a lot more as that issue is on the Senate side in the months to come.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And for other folks who may not know, we do have a lot of guest appearances or guest stars, including Carolyn, but I see Stacy Weinberger, former SAC member. We have David Young, who's on the line, and we're really looking forward to hearing their perspectives on how to strengthen the SAC in a little bit.
Great. Thanks, Morgan. It does feel like a reunion. It's really nice. So I just posted in the chat box a link that takes you to our new candidate names and bios. So we're going to shift and do some voting for the 6 new at-large members joining the State Advisory Council. The executive committee for the SAC also serves as the nominating committee. So at this time, we bring forth these 6 members to
Cheryl,
be approved.
I'm so sorry for interrupting. I apologize. We just had one more appreciation that I wanted to quickly do before we move into the new members.
Okay, I will stop.
So sorry. Okay, sorry. We had one more SAC member that we just wanted to say a sincere thank you to, and that's Nicole Grenier. And Nicole has been such an incredible early childhood champion, and in both the systems work, but also as a parent and as a small business owner. She wears so many different hats, both again as a small business owner, a parent, but also as a mental health clinician. And she brought such an incredible energy, but also voice to early childhood and family mental health. And she has really used that voice to position thoughtfully and effectively and inspire others to be doing that same work. So I just wanted to, again, thank Nicole as she is transitioning off the board. I know she's not able to be here today, but we really appreciate your time and look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
Thanks, Morgan. I'm glad that you interrupted me because I was looking at that piece and got ahead of myself. I think it was so exciting to see Carolyn and to hear all this recognition. So thank you for not letting me miss Nicole. So at this point, I think we're on track to talk about new members. So in the chat box is a link that you can click on to get more information. But I did want to share some information about the candidates, new folks to our board. So first is Alexis Duquette. Lexi is a parent of 4 children living in Poultney and actively involved with the Building Bright Futures Families and Communities Committee. She served as a parent ambassador for the recently completed Family Engagement Assessment and was elected co-chair of the Southeast Vermont Regional Council. Dr. Ashley Miller, I have to say, it was lovely to see you sitting in the sun in your car. However we can get sun while it's here is really important. Dr. Miller works at the South Royalton Health Center as well as school-based clinics. She works with kids from birth through graduation and has a special interest in adolescent medicine and mental health. She's also actively engaged in the Vermont chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Rebecca Webb, and I heard, good to have the clarification of where Lexi is from. Rebecca Webb, and I heard, Rebecca, when you introduced yourself, you said Becca, so I'm hoping that is your preferred name. Becca Webb is the Act 166 coordinator for several supervisory unions in central Vermont. She's also worked as a developmental educator in early intervention, as a public school classroom teacher, itinerant special educator, as well as a teacher and director in a community childcare program. Becca also is a member of the Building Bright Futures Child Outcomes Accountability Team. Eddie Gale is the Vermont Program Director for the A.D. Henderson Foundation. He brings experience as a key philanthropic partner supporting early childhood systems improvements. Eddie has been a longtime partner of BBF by serving on VCAP committees and attending SAC meetings regularly. Mike McCraith works as the Assistant Executive Director for the Vermont Principals Association. Mike was the 2018 Vermont High School Educator of the Year and is here to help bridge early childhood work with our public education system and build a more seamless system throughout the life course. Welcome, Mike. And Paul Dragon, who sounds like isn't on, but very exciting to welcome Paul. He's the Executive Director of the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity. He also most recently was at the Agency of Human Services, worked closely together. He did a lot of work around field directors and then also used to be the director of the Office of Economic Development. All right, I'm hoping I didn't miss anything, so I'm just going to pause for a moment in case. All right, thumbs up is super helpful, Morgan. So wanted to say we are extremely excited to have such a wealth of early childhood expertise coming to the council. It's our practice generally to have candidates step out of the room when we call for vote. But given we're gathered virtually, if you could just please turn your video off and step away for a moment. This probably seems a little awkward. I remember when we were in person, and I had my own nomination, stepping out of the room. So this is essentially our virtual, please step away for a moment while we do our vote. So for the 6 folks that I just introduced, if you could turn your video off and just step away for a minute, that would be wonderful. Great. So we will do votes one at a time. The voting language is The Building Bright Future State Advisory Council, at the recommendation of the Executive Committee, moves to elect the following as at-large members of the Advisory Council for a term of 3 years, which brings us to March 31st, 2024. That seems really far away, but it won't be. So first voting is for Alexis Duquette. And as Morgan said, you can either do a thumbs up or just an eye if you want to unmute yourself.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Flor. Thanks. So I'm scanning through our pictures. It looks like I see thumbs up and I heard many eyes. All right.
I apologize.
This is definitely.
Folks, can we start by asking for a motion to accept?
So moved.
Thank you, Flor. Yep.
I second. This is Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
All right. How about all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Anyone who would like to abstain? All right. Morgan, did you want this to be individual or are we doing this as a group?
We can do it as a full slate. That's completely fine.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. So it looks like we have 6 new members.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Wonderful. So Morgan, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you all and welcome to our new members. For those of you who were just voted onto the board, we do invite you to turn your cameras back on and rejoin the group if you can hear us. And, you know, the next step of this is to present the nominations for our executive committee. So for those of you who haven't heard a little bit more about our executive committee, this is really the group that serves as the leadership team and provides the advising of the BBF executive director. So myself, they really support basic operations and providing that guidance and nonprofit governance, as well as strategic guidance for the State Advisory Council. Our executive committee does have 6 seats, and today what you're going to be presented with is a nomination for Flor Diaz-Smith to serve as the treasurer of the SAC, a renomination of Renee Kelly for another 2-year term as secretary, and the renomination for Cheryl Wilcox and Chloe Leary for a 1-year term as co-chairs. And the reason that's a 1-year term versus a 2-year term is that their final term on the SAC ends at the end of March 2022. So at this time, I am going to call the Building Bright Futures State Advisory Council to vote on those members. So Cheryl, Renee, and Flor, can I ask you to step out of the virtual room for a moment? And those who just joined the board, you are able to vote formally now. So at this time, I'm going to ask for the Building Bright Future State Advisory Council at the recommendation of the existing executive committee to move to elect the following slate of officers for the executive committee for a term of 2 years, beginning April 1st, 2021, ending March 31st, 2023. And that slate is Flor Diaz-Smith being nominated to serve as the treasurer on the executive committee for a 2-year term, Renee Kelly nominated as a secretary for another 2-year term, and Cheryl Wilcox and Chloe Leary for a 1-year term as co-chairs to complete their time in the executive committee March 31st, 2022. Can I have a motion to accept this slate of officers for the executive committee for the State Advisory Council?
I'll move.
Thank you, Allie. Thank you, Eddie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right. I'm going to invite everybody to turn their cameras back on And huge congratulations to new and returning State Advisory Council and Executive Committee members. We are thrilled to have you be a part of this team and to really be ambassadors for the work of the board and the early childhood arena within your sector. So thank you for being here and congratulations. All right, we decided that the second part of this meeting, it felt appropriate and something we hadn't done in previous years to spend the next bit of time orienting folks, doing a reset and reorientation of folks to the board as executive committee members, as members of the State Advisory Council in terms of the roles and responsibilities. And once we get through just a brief introduction, we're going to have a larger discussion where I would like to invite our veteran SAC members to be weighing in on what's been really amazing about your time on the SAC, what are the strengths and what are opportunities. And we'll start that out by having David Young come back in and talk about his time on the board. But before we do that, I am going to have Dora share a screen for a little bit. And as many of you know, we've done a lot of work in this last year, really focusing on, as a board, as an organization, as an early childhood network, what our vision is, what our mission is. And I want to start by really getting folks on board and having that very concrete buy-in for what our vision is for a child born 5 years from now. What is our work between now and 2026? So I invite you to turn off your camera if you'd like to. You're more than welcome to keep yourself on the screen. But what we have here is a photo of a child. And I want you to visualize that in 2026, this child's born to a family in Vermont. We'll call her baby Mariah. Vermont's a state where all children and families are accepted for who they are, and we support this child from the very start all the way through their development and education. This child thrives with the loving care of her parents and caregivers. Her family is safe and stable in their home and has food in their fridge today and on the horizon. Baby Mariah's parents use paid family leave and home visiting to support the physical and mental health of both parents and baby. The family is connected to their diverse community and can access services, resources, and the support they need, including but not limited to high quality childcare, a faith community of their choice, mental health support, healthy foods, and jobs. Mariah grows into a toddler, preschooler, and eventually transitions into the local elementary school. She's resilient to navigate even the most difficult days she'll face. Mariah does not yet know that there's a community holding her and her family through a seamless system of support. This is a system where all children have a healthy start, where families and communities play a leading role in children's well-being, where families have access to high-quality opportunities that meet their needs, and where the early childhood system is integrated, well-resourced, and data-informed. This is the future. Next slide, please. So the reason we start with that visualization is because this community, this board, this early childhood network has done so much work in the past few years and has articulated a very clear vision for what this will look like over the next 5 years. We've also done quite a bit of work re-articulating the mission and the vision statement for the board and the organization. So our mission is to improve the well-being of each and every child and family in Vermont by using evidence to inform policy and bringing voices together to discuss critical challenges and problem solve. And I know we just heard about the bigger vision, but I think it's important for me to remind folks that as a board, as a network, we are to maintain the vision and strategic plan for Vermont's early childhood system. We do that through what we call Vermont's Early Childhood Action Plan, or the VCAP, and that serves as that strategic plan. Within that plan, the vision for the early childhood system is to be an integrated continuum of comprehensive, high-quality services that's equitable, accessible, and will improve outcomes for each and every child in the prenatal period through age 8 and their family in Vermont. And I think what's important about that vision is that often when folks think about early childhood, they think about one age range or they think about one sector. And they forget that we're actually talking about supporting moms and families in the prenatal period, as well as children through age 8 and their families in the state of Vermont. Another important piece for folks to know is that we are charged both in state and federal statute to be Vermont's Early Childhood State Advisory Council. So you will see that appear in Vermont's Act 104, as well as Vermont's Title 33, Chapter 46, to be that primary advisor to the governor and legislature on the status and the well-being of children and their families. Next slide, please. So as we think about the work of this network and of the State Advisory Council, we've put together a visual that we think captures a decent amount of the work, but I do want to make sure that folks actually go back to Chapter 46 and to Act 104 to review what we are called to do. And a few slides later, I'll actually walk you through some of the more concrete components. But what you're seeing here on this visual is 5 key components of that work. The first is serving as a neutral convener. So how do we, at all layers of our infrastructure, bring partners together across sectors to be having really challenging conversations that require a lot of vulnerability and coming to the table with an open mind to really discuss the barriers, the gaps, the challenges, and figure out how we move that forward and strategize. Another key piece of that work is monitoring the early childhood system of services. And that may involve qualitative or quantitative data. It involves understanding how and where we are as an early childhood system in providing equitable, accessible services for kids and families, and how that impacts their well-being and longer-term outcomes. It also involves empowering families and communities. So how are we as a network and as a board providing opportunities for family leadership and communities to lead and elevate their needs and creating continuous feedback loops? Another component of this is responding to fill gaps. So through all of these different layers, we're already talking about the fact that we're identifying gaps, barriers, and challenges. But we as an early childhood system, specifically at the State Advisory Council and the regional council level, are there to respond to fill gaps in the needs of kids and families. And then finally, a very key role is serving as the primary advisor to the governor and the legislature on the well-being of children and families. Next slide, please. So I just mentioned the type of work we do, but I also want to be very clear with this board that there's often confusion about what Building Bright Futures is. Sometimes folks think that Building Bright Futures is the 10 to 12 person team that's supporting ongoing work. But when we are actually talking about Building Bright Futures, we're talking about a very large network of over 450 people that are coming together on a monthly basis at all different layers of our infrastructure to do all of the work that we just talked about. So what you're seeing in this visual on the left-hand side is that everything we do is to support children and families, and that we are committing as a board and as a network to using evidence and data to inform policy. At the very base of this network are 12 regional councils that are coming together on a monthly basis in every corner of the state to do similar work that the State Advisory Council is doing. And they're the ones that are on the ground, making sure they're identifying gaps, barriers, and challenges, and then elevating them up. That next layer, as I mentioned earlier, is the Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan committees. So our VCAP has 7 different committees that monitor whether or not we're making progress towards our charge. And then finally, this group that's on the call today, our State Advisory Council, and you all are charged as ambassadors in this work. So our job in coming together on a monthly basis as a board is to make sure that we take everything that's heard from families, from everything that happens in regional councils and VCAP committees, and are able to elevate that, determine what our priorities are on an annual basis or monthly, depending on things like the pandemic happening. How do we shift and adapt to those needs, and making recommendations on behalf of children and families statewide. The next layer is the interagency coordinating team. And this group is solely the public or our agency partners who serve on the State Advisory Council. They come together as well on a monthly basis. And a part of their role is to, again, just like the State Advisory Council, be ambassadors for the work that happens here and bringing it back to leadership within their different sectors, whether it's the secretaries or other folks who are key decision makers within their sectors or agencies. And then finally, the policymakers or decision makers. So again, the legislature and the governor's team. And this network provides the opportunity for us to elevate priorities, barriers, and challenges, and then implement decisions back down through this network and serve as an accountability structure for the early childhood system in Vermont. Next slide, please. Just to give you a quick snapshot for those of you who haven't been engaged in the regional council work, this snapshot is from April 2020, so almost a year ago, right in the middle of, just trying to bridge what we were planning to do and how we were going to support early childhood COVID response. These were the needs and priorities of our 12 different regions across the state. And what we're really excited about in putting a map together like this every 6 months of the year is that we can see where there are consistent patterns of challenges and gaps for kids and families, and where there's unique individual variation within regions that we need to be paying attention to. Next slide, please. As members of the board, I also want to make sure that you know about the range of publications and resources that we as a network produce. And for some reason, this happened to be the year where we produced maybe 6 or more very large publications for the state of Vermont. So what you're seeing on the left is the executive summary of the Early Childhood Needs Assessment. That was an 80-page document capturing the needs, gaps, barriers, and opportunities for kids and families from the past 5 years. It also had a COVID spotlight there, but that is a really important document for you to be referencing as you're looking for data on behalf of children and families. The second document is that based on that needs assessment, we updated Vermont's Early Childhood Strategic Plan, or the Action Plan, which we call the VCAP. And that is where you will see not only the 4 goals that we as a system have set by 2025, 2026, but also the objectives and the strategies for how we're going to get there. And in addition to that, for the first time, we've actually operationalized those and said, okay, here are the indicators and the outcomes that we're going to monitor and measure to see whether or not we're making progress. Another document that is so powerful and we're so excited to talk more about is the Early Childhood Family Engagement Assessment. So we were able to hire as a network over 22 parent ambassadors in our system across the state. And they then did outreach to other families and put together a report on how we can move forward in providing opportunities for parents to be engaged and to provide leadership opportunities for families. So please take a look at that one as well. Next slide, please. And another really important publication for folks to understand and know about is a staple for us as a state advisory council. So every year we are required in the first month of the legislative session to present the How Are Vermont's Young Children and Families report. And this is the big snapshot of how kids and families are doing. And what's important here is that this is where we have our annual recommendations that go to the legislature and all layers of our network, but it also includes a ton of really important data. This year, a COVID spotlight talking about what was really powerful and impacting kids and families during the COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to other indicators. Next slide, please. And finally, another new resource this year is Vermont's Early Childhood Resource Data and Policy Center. And this is something that BBF stood up based on the call from the early childhood community and Vermont's legislature as a centralized place for folks to find resources, data, publications, and that is where you can actually see a dashboard of all of the indicators that we are monitoring for Vermont's Early Childhood Action Plan. There's a range of different resources, webinars, and a portal for folks to ask questions about other examples of work that's happening in the early childhood arena, or to identify data gaps. All right. And lastly, I just want to say that as a board, as an early childhood network, we have committed to using Vermont's guiding principles. And for those of you who may not have seen this document before, this is a framework that's been built around the state's commitment to realizing the promise of each and every young child in Vermont. In 2019, the board actually took a really bold step in specifying exactly what it means for each and every child and family to have access to what they need. And so the SAC joined the Agency of Education in endorsing these principles to support each and every young child's full and equitable participation. So please take a few minutes to look at that document. I know it was sent in the supporting materials, but in the next few months, we are going to be diving back into our equity work and really trying to understand how we implement these guiding principles across our sectors and how we can partner with Vermont's Office of Racial Equity to integrate recommendations in our work. Next slide, please. So folks often wonder what our board is called to do. And what we tried to do is take a very lengthy list that was outlined in sections 46 of Title 33 and distill it to 8 points. And as a board, these are the expectations and functions of what we are charged to be doing. So the first is conducting a periodic needs assessment and monitoring that early childhood system through the development of performance measures and monitoring progress. The second is developing and maintaining a strategic plans based on the needs of our constituents. Reducing duplication and improving coordination, aligning policies, programs, and service provision. Convening diverse cross-sector stakeholders to enhance coordination, collaboration, and integration, really moving towards development of a comprehensive early childhood system at every level. So from regional councils right up through the SAC. Creating and enhancing coordinated interoperable data systems. Coordinating budgets across the Agency of Human Services, Commerce, and Education to develop an integrated early childhood budget that is really aligned with our strategic plans so that we can be leveraging funding. Formulating recommendations and advising the administration and General Assembly, and then advocating on behalf of the early childhood system to really drive policy and legislative change. And that number 8 is a really challenging one for a lot of folks because we as a board do not advocate on behalf of any one bill, proposal, or idea. Instead, our job is to advocate on behalf of the entire early childhood system and making sure that we are making recommendations that impact all children and families statewide. Next slide. So before we transition to our discussion, I just want to say that, again, our leadership across this network are engaged in a range of different opportunities to support kids and families. One of those is collaborating with the Children's Cabinet Network and state advisory councils across the country to make sure that we are up to date on best practices. But just to say that Vermont is very unique because not only do we have our federal mandate to be the State Advisory Council through the Head Start Act, but we have a state statute that describes our role in that very way. We are also unique because we have 12 regional councils that extend to every corner of the state, and we serve as a very trusted advisor in the legislature and among our state agency partners. So I'm going to stop the screen share, and I'd like to invite David Young, who is a former co-chair of the SAC, to talk more about our charge under Act 104. And I invited David to come because I think it's important for former members as well as current members to reflect on their time on the board, to talk about the importance of the board and what it means to be in this advisory role, as well as any opportunities to strengthen this work. So I'm going to transition it over to David. Thank you for being here.
No problem. Thank you, Morgan. Good to see a lot of familiar faces continuing to do great work. So, and welcome to the new folks coming on board. So I really, Morgan's done such a nice job of outlining the purpose and expectations of BBF under Act 104. So I don't have a lot really to add there. But I think as a board member, you have an awful lot of opportunity to really help with that convening, process. And, from my perspective, being in education for, a long time now, the foundation, which we all know is so important. And that foundation starts at the very beginning. And I'm really excited to hear, again, the prenatal part of that is that we begin the process helping to assure mom and whomever is going to support them have what they need to be able to thrive. And we know that that's critically important. So this foundation, from my perspective, is just absolutely fundamental. And what we know is that if we do that right, it has so many opportunities to, bend the curve, ensure that our children are on a positive pathway, that they have what they need to thrive. I often will talk about, and again, I think the important work from my perspective for all of you is to really continue to think about being proactive versus reactive. So many things that we do, and I'll say in my field too, in education, is reactive. Once we get data, we have to react. When we know that the science is strong and says that when we begin early with strong foundations and learning outcomes for children, whether it's language acquisition or behavior regulation, they all start at the very beginning. And so for me, what you're doing or what you're embarking on is really all about proactiveness and bringing people together to advocate for that very important foundation, to me, is absolutely critical. So often I'll get into some conversations with people around, putting in categories what are proactive initiatives and reactive initiatives. And unfortunately, we put a lot of money and energy and resources into reactivity and not so much into proactivity. And when we put them into proactivity areas, we recognize that curve bends, costs can go down, but more importantly, outcomes for our children can increase and thrive. So I love this. I love the network. I think it's really important that folks like yourself help to convene. And that's what I think has been really successful at BBF is that you can invite individuals into the meetings and have conversations, help really allow that to happen and bring other parties in to listen to that, which can help along these critical pathways. So again, I just feel that such an important entity. It's great that we have a direct line to the governor and the governor's leadership. And it's been, we've accomplished a lot. And I quite honestly believe that there will be a lot more in the foreseeable future. So I'm gonna end there. People who also know me, they know that I can talk long. So brevity is a good thing. And again, I just want to welcome everybody and thanks for your service. Thank you, Morgan.
Thanks, David. Thank you for being here. I do want to take a couple of minutes to ask some of our veteran SAC members to turn their cameras back on and, to take that same time for reflection and talk a little bit about what you have found to be the most important components of the SAC or why it's so critical for you to be at this table to participate. And I know Dora's going to copy and paste some of our key questions that are coming, so you know what to anticipate. But starting with, why is it important for you to be at this table? What have you found so instrumental and exciting about this work?
Morgan, this is Cheryl. I'm happy to go first. I've already talked, so I was trying to pause long enough in case someone else wanted to go first. So I've been on the council for several years now, representing the Department of Mental Health. And I would say what has been incredibly valuable is being at this table means that I get to hear from across the state directly what's happening in early childhood, that then knowing how, as a Department of Mental Health, how to focus our energy and prioritize work that affects our youngest Vermonters. And BBF has done an amazing job of highlighting mental health in Vermont and what it means for young children. I think it removes a lot of the stigma around when people hear mental health, they think there's a problem or an issue, as opposed to it's just part of our overall health. And I think BBF has been instrumental in moving that focus forward and making sure that we're all having similar conversations. So it's something I value tremendously. And I feel like there are times in our work we all have our heads down and are just moving forward, especially in the past year. And I think the leadership at BBF and this group has really pushed on saying, like, lift your head up, let's all collaborate together and make sure we're paying attention to that. And I have always appreciated that. So it feels like the time spent in focusing on early childhood and BBF and with all of you is time that is incredibly valuable. And I think our department has benefited tremendously from the relationship.
Thank you, Cheryl. Others?
I'd be happy to chime in too. It's Allie from Let's Grow Kids. And we, well, I feel like I've been working in early childhood now for some time, including when I was at the governor's office, and always as a cross-sectional, sort of hulking thing that is so important. We just need as many, I guess, coordinating, neutral parties of sort of consolidating places to share ideas, to hear from the field, to sort of have this like feedback loop that goes in both directions from communities, but to a place that actually can be, then be actionable for policy advice or other things. And so how many times in the last sort of 12 years of my working sort of tangentially in this community have we said, well, we need a place to go. Where is this conversation happening? Who's hosting this conversation? How do we get information around? And BBF continues to grow as a more and more effective sort of place for that. It's just been an absolute need. And so, for example, Let's Grow Kids, we just are, focused like a laser on one piece of the puzzle on childcare, but it is connected to everything else. So, we certainly couldn't be doing the advocacy work on childcare without BBF, without knowing there was a connection into all this other work, a place where we could bring updates and ideas and, share out and be part of the broader ecosystem. So, to me, to continue to see BBF as strong as it is now, I feel like we've all been on this, forward path together. And Morgan, your leadership has been unbelievable. And all of you new SAC members, unbelievable crew with, diverse experiences and backgrounds and sectors, exactly the direction I think we need to be going to really be that place that people know this is ear to the ground in communities, but also up towards policy and the governor. And just, I know we couldn't have done any of the work in Let's Grow Kids without BBF. And thank you for continuing to bring us together and focus, the value in all the ways you've been doing and really focusing on data as well. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Allie. Any others? Eddie.
I just wanted to highlight the difference between a strategic plan and your action plan. And a strategic plan is really a thoughtful analysis to a certain degree of what somebody else should do. And the action plan is, these are the things that we're going to accomplish. And having this venue for everyone to come together and make their commitments to those components of that plan is what causes it to be a success. It was a joy with the first version that we literally checked off. Okay, we did that, we did that, we did that. Now we've got to go the next step, and that's what the next version of the action plan represents.
Thank you, Addie. Any other reflections on folks' time on the SAC?
I'll speak up and say, I'm remembering some of us went to a conference in Pittsburgh. I don't know who was the Build conference, to talk about how do we really leverage Building Bright Futures to be what it can be. I've seen a lot of progress on that. I think we have ways to go. And so my time here, I feel like, is valuable on behalf of children and families and the early childhood system. That's the thing that we are here to strengthen. I know there aren't magic answers, and it's just putting our shoulder to the wheel to keep it going. And the value of public-private partnership, cross-sector discussion is so necessary in early childhood. I think it's necessary across disciplines and sectors, but there's something about early childhood that's different. And so we need to model that, and this council does that. And so I'll keep at it as long as we're here, because I think it's so important that we sort of demonstrate the value of that work and make sure people really understand. David, you said it well, like early childhood is the foundation of the rest of it. Allie, you say, tell me why you care about, what you care about, and I'll tell you why you should care about childcare. I would argue, tell me what you care about, and I'll tell you why you should care about kids and families. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Chloe. Kate?
Hi, everybody. So just very quickly, I agree with everything that everyone just said. Having BBF as a neutral convener of all of our what we want to have as a seamless system of early childhood in Vermont makes so much sense. So I absolutely appreciate education's voice from, birth through through the end of high school and so on. So thank you all. And I look forward to future conversations as we move forward.
Thank you, Kate. Any reflections from even more recent board members? I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity as you've been integrating yourselves into the State Advisory Council and different layers of the network. Anything you'd like to share about what you see as critical or important?
Right. So I just wanted to share that, last year especially was a hard year, but it's such a productive year I felt for BBF, and a lot of the conversations that we had were, I don't know, in my mind, so exciting to be able to say out loud and recognize the racism as a public health crisis and say it out loud as a board was really powerful and historic in my mind. And just that I really enjoy the diverse thought that is around this board, where we all come together for the common good, for childcare through K-12, and I really enjoy everybody working together. I'm looking forward for what the future brings next year, now that we have highlighted through the pandemic all the issues that we need to work on and rethink.
Thank you, Fleur. All right, any final thoughts on reflections from anyone who's been on the board in past years or currently sits on the board before we move on to the next reflection question?
Hi. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stacey.
No, go ahead, Wendy. All right. Well, I'll be quick. So I actually have to go to school pickup in a second. But I just thought it was such a great opportunity as a classroom educator and program director of a pretty small center to have the opportunity to sit at such a big table, because when any of us at work, like, you're just very in your own thing, and when you're dealing with 4 toddler families who are struggling with a food insecurity issue or a mental health issue or an addiction issue, it can feel kind of isolating and you're not sure where to go. But the opportunity to look up and see a state organization that is connecting people, where there are resources, and where there is really a commitment to all row in the same direction, really buoyed my spirits and my ability to come back to my team and say, here's what's going on statewide, and we're not alone, and lots of centers are struggling with this, but there's opportunity. I think that was really important, and I think whatever we can do to keep bringing those messages back to the boots on the ground people can be really supportive. And BBF, I saw BBF play that role for me personally, and I think we can keep having that play the role for the staff who are doing the work every day.
Thank you, Stacey. Wendy?
Great, thanks. Hi, this is my first meeting, and my position's within the Office of Healthcare Reform at the Agency of Human Services. And we have very sort of broad, lofty goals around reducing healthcare costs and growth, and ensuring that all Vermonters have access to coverage for high quality care, and improving the health of Vermont's population. And those really large goals, it's hard to often know and keep your finger on the pulse of all of the best practices and all of the systems that are influencing everyone within Vermont's population. So I'm really looking forward to this opportunity to learn from everyone here about early childhood and families, and how we can make improvements that impact healthcare reform in addition to just improving children and families.
Thank you so much, Wendy. It's actually a perfect transition. And as I mentioned to Wendy last week, I think as we're thinking about opportunities for improvements and thinking about who's not at the table, one of the things that we've really been focused on in this last year is making sure that we have a stronger education voice at this table in a range of different ways, and a stronger health voice through having pediatric physicians, but also our payers, right? The fact that we're able to have Wendy here is so exciting, because we now have an opportunity to do more of the integration from the health side as well as the education side. So thank you all for being here. And I do want to transition us to talk a little bit, and we've mentioned more of the strengths, where have we come from and how are we moving forward? But I'd love to hear folks' ideas for how we as a board, as the SAC, through recommendations or other mechanisms, how can we strengthen our work? Where are there opportunities for improvement? And I will hold an awkward silence here. I have plenty to say on this, but I'd love to hear from you all as board members. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, thanks again. So, I'm really new to this and still learning. Thanks everyone for sharing your perspectives. One of the things I'm interested in, and hopefully this is applicable to the conversation, is thinking about what our measures of success are, like what determines success. And I think we've gone for relatively easy measures. And I think that we can sense in our hearts and our minds that we want to do more to determine, what success is. And I think that has a lot to do with wellness. I think that has a lot to do with health, and really incorporating those in a more systematic way, and also in a way that is connected to all stakeholders. So that everyone's voice is well represented to say, this is working for me or this isn't working for me. And so I think that may be a good point of leverage, not only in our work together, but sort of across the spectrum of community building for Vermont, is thinking about what determines success.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. And, it's absolutely been an area of growth, I would say, for the SAC and for the network over the last couple of years, and really thinking about how we use evidence and data to inform policy. And do we actually have the data we need to be able to say what we'd like to on behalf of kids and families? Do we have outcomes that actually measure success? What does that mean? Are we always using proxy measures? And does our data infrastructure, does our data, or do our data systems have the ability to capture that data and do what we need to at the different layers? So I think that that's such a great point. Other thoughts and reflections about how we can improve the work that we're doing? How can we build? Where are there opportunities for us to move forward?
I'm just going to jump in. This is Emily. I noticed over the last year, we've had a few instances of really high profile guests in these state advisory council meetings. And it reminds me that the ripple effect of our work can be really broad and wide, and we can really leverage and harness those opportunities. Because what I've noticed both in my own, work and efforts, but also in, conversations, is that, this is one of the few groups maybe in my life, and I don't know about everybody else, where I feel like the needle is moved, where change happens, where we can actually say that a conversation that began at this table impacted policy change or funding changes, or directly impacted increased benefits for families. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to do more of that.
Thank you for sharing, Emily. Other thoughts? When I look at the list of 8 things on one of the previous slides, and actually, Dora, I'm going to ask if you're able to slide share one more time so that folks can see what we again are charged with under Act 104, and And section 46, one of the things that catches my eye that I think in the past the SAC has started to move forward, but that we have a lot of work left to do, is in number 6. So coordinating budgets across our different service sectors and really looking at how we can develop an early childhood budget and then leverage funding dollars. How can we actually, how can we bring those partners together? And I know when I first started in this position a little over a year and a half ago, I'm almost at 2 years. When I started this position, it was really exciting to see the previous developed early childhood budget, but that wasn't something that, given the pandemic and given some of the VCAP committees that we had, we didn't have the capacity to continue to move that forward. That's absolutely an area that I see for growth for this board, is actually going back and really focusing on how we look at our system of services. How do we look at the finances and the resources that we allocate to children and families across sectors? And how do we understand, how we move that, or how we're using that money in a meaningful way? How can we look at other potential exciting funding opportunities? And how do we make sure that we have the right people at the table to have those different conversations? In looking at this list, is there anything else that is sparked for you all? Thank you for being here, Lisa. Other areas that you see are really areas for growth for this board in the next year?
I know that I sound a bit like a broken record, but I think that there is looking at with the equity lens from the racial equity point of view. So like moving it across, we talked before in one of our meetings about diversifying the educator workforce, and that is for childcare too. It's not making our state more attractive, as we're like David was saying, this is a foundation for our kids. So the more they learn early on, the better foundation they will have as we make our state more welcoming for a diverse population in our very old state, 65 and older growing. So I think we're conscious of that, and that is an area of growth that we're aware of.
Thank you, Flor. Any other last opportunities for ways that we can build or strengthen the work that we are all doing?
I am going to chime in again, Morgan. I hate to say it twice,
No,
I'm
please.
sorry, but I do wonder if we have, I'm just struck in thinking about your point about advocacy. So if our charge is to gather information and make recommendations, it's not advocacy, but I do think we could there's an opportunity to translate the data we collect into recommendations so people understand, it's not advocacy per se, but recommendations. And I think we could do a little there. Yeah, we have maybe a chance to draw the through line a little better for people about that. Because I think, yeah, I'm going to stop there. That's all.
Absolutely. So I'm hoping that we will be able to end today's meeting just a little bit early so folks can even take 5 minutes to walk outside. But I do want to take the next 5 minutes to talk about who may be missing from the table. And the reason I want to ask this question to the State Advisory Council, to you all who are sitting on the board, is because through H171, the most recent child care bill, there's been a discussion about updating Act 104 or Section 46. And I would like that conversation to happen with the folks who are overseeing Act 46. So I'm really hoping to have that conversation with you all. When you look across our board members and you heard about the diverse representation of who's here and who may not be here, who are we missing from this table that should be here to help us understand what's needed on behalf of children and families? And again, I have a lot of different ideas about this, so I'm going to stay silent for a couple of minutes, I'd really like to hear from you all. And that could be at-large members, it could be agency leadership. Who's not at the table that should be?
And we're a refugee resettlement state, and so I think it's important that we have somebody to represent families from that population in this council.
Thanks, Amy. Others?
I think I noticed we had a business representative opening now that Nicole is not part of the team anymore. And that reminded me that here in Vermont, we have a number of really progressive, forward-thinking corporations and larger businesses and human resources departments. And those are places that think about and make public statements about, you know, universal childcare, you know, funding, paid family leave, these values and priorities that BBF has set forward. And I think, you know, they're located across the state. So we wouldn't be really talking about just like a Chittenden County bubble, which tends to happen. So I would love to see some outreach to, you know, to make connections with employers.
Emily? Other thoughts? Some of the other partners that came to mind as I started thinking about, you know, if we were really going to be updating Act 104 and this section, just from a membership standpoint, thinking about, you know, other state agency partners who may or may not be missing from the table, like family support services, economic services. If there are other education representatives or different groups that are not at the table, Lexi, I'm thrilled to see you here. If you want to take a minute in just a minute to introduce yourself, since you weren't here earlier, I do want to allow you to do that. And business partners was also on my list, both small business, but then some of our larger corporate sponsorships and how we can really bring them to the table in different ways to make a difference in the lives for kids and families. And as I mentioned, that in this last year, we've really been doing a heavy push to integrate our health partners, those from payers, but also pediatricians and direct service, thinking social work and that type of thing. And not to say that we would like to have a board of 40 members, but again, if we are really the place where the hard conversations are going to be happening about how we move forward the work for children and families, then is there anyone else that you all see that may be missing? Thank you, Kate. I'm also monitoring the chat. And so, you know, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kate.
No, Morgan, I'm sorry. I wasn't saying anything. I just put, you know, thinking about our local budgets and everything and the towns with which each of us reside in. And the local or the Vermont League of Cities and Towns has representation from every town and municipality across the state. So they might be an organization to tap into, and that they can also, you know, speak to park and recreation and all those type of pieces. So I just wanted to throw that out there too.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Morgan, this is Kim, and another statewide system of people who are interacting with young children and their families frequently is the Library Association and children's librarians. And so I think that sometimes we underestimate or just forget about the impact that they are having on families all the time, but definitely during this pandemic. I was just talking to the Island Pond Library this morning, and how much work they're doing, not only in terms of literacy, but being distribution of food and that kind of thing for children and families as well. So maybe thinking about having somebody representing the Library Association would be beneficial.
That's a great idea, Kim. Thank you. And, you know, I think we can keep building this list. One of the things I'd like to invite folks to do in the next week or so is take a look at Act 104, and if you haven't already, and Section 46, very, very similar language, but to take a look at that body of work, think about anybody else that may be missing from the table, and to think if there's something from our charge that needs to be more clearly articulated there as well. So if there's an opportunity for this to be updated, which we as a board could bring to the table in the legislature, we can do that. And it's already there right now in the context of H171. So I just don't want to, you know, I don't want to put pressure on the board to make changes right now, but I just want you to know that that conversation is happening. And I want you to be a part of that conversation versus that just happening in the legislature where folks are discussing who they think should be on the board, which many of the folks that we just talked about were representatives there, in addition to including a line about equity and those most vulnerable and marginalized in our work. So thank you for engaging in that conversation. Before we go, there are 2 members of the board that were just voted in that are now on the call. So I just want to give them a minute to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Lexi.
Hi, my name is Alexis Duquette. You can call me Lexi. I am a mom of 4 in Putney, Vermont. I was actually raised in Vermont. So this is such an honor. Now being a Vermont parent, we had moved around, and I look at Vermont as such a special place to raise your family. It's so unique. It's so different than anywhere else. So there's a lot of unique things that makes Vermont so special and inviting. And I see in our community so many new families that have moved in over COVID. So I feel like this is such an honor to be invited on here. So I'm so excited to be a part of this and to actually be a part of something higher up. Sometimes I feel like from a family standpoint, you feel so disconnected, you know, from the people that are telling you such big things, right? So this feels like a way to be connected and to connect families. So I'm so honored. Thank you guys so much. So I'm excited.
Thank you so much for being here, Lexi. We're thrilled to have you. And Paul, I want to give you a minute to introduce yourself as well. Thank you for being here and welcome to the board.
Thank you. Nobody should go after Lexi. That was incredible. I can't match that. Yeah, I too am honored to be here. I know some of you, and I'm really I've enjoyed the discussion. Sorry for being late. I did let Morgan know that I'd have to be late for this meeting. And I'm just looking forward to learning. I am familiar with your work. And I love like the 2-generational approach. I'm currently the executive director at the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity. We have a very big Head Start program. We also do a lot of work with new Americans, and we have a large community ambassador program. Do a lot of work with adults, and I'm just continually interested to merge those 2 worlds and take a whole family approach. So super excited to be here and to learn from everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Paul. We're thrilled to have you. All right. I would like to ask each of you to take the next 5 minutes and not check your email and blast 15 of them, but to go outside, even if it's just to take a couple of deep breaths and to take the next 5 minutes before your last couple of meetings of the day. I really appreciate you being here. I'm thrilled to have you on the board, and I am honored to be able to lead Vermont's Early Childhood State Advisory Council. So thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.